everyone, and welcome to the Kimberly Guilfoyle Show, live on Rumble, where facts come first and where news is done right. And last week, President Trump marked 6 months in office, highlighting landmark legislation and record low crossings at the U.S. border. Watch.
Border with Mexico, where there is little question that Trump is fulfilling a campaign promise.
All illegal entry will immediately be halted.
In a matter of months, migrant crossings have hit record lows. Apprehensions at the southern border dropped to 6,072 in the month of June, a massive reduction from the 83,532 apprehensions recorded in June of last year.
Over 25 miles of concertina wire our U.S. Marines put up for us.
Acting Patrol Chief Jeffrey Stallnacher tells us the San Diego sector has seen a significant drop in illegal entries.
And what that has done, it's allowed us to get our agents back on the border to do their traditional work. In addition to that, we have maximized consequences. It can be an immigration consequence or a consequence because of a criminal history, something that they've done in the past.
So in other words, if they come across, you find out they have criminal history, they go to jail and probably be kicked out later. Or if they don't, they're just immediately repatriated.
Yes, so criminal history and immigration.
And that's not all on the economy. The president is putting middle-class families first and ushering a whopping $15 trillion in new investment. Take a look.
Speaking of home runs, it's a grand slam. I would give him an A++ because he has worked so hard for the American people every single day to deliver win after win. We see it on the economic side. We see 720,000 new jobs created, over $15 trillion in economic growth brought into America, inflation cut. We see a consumer confidence coming back, small business confidence above its 51-year average, and now with the One Big Beautiful Bill, the largest working family tax cut in American history being passed, this economy is spring-loaded, but it's not just that. It's national security, foreign policy. We have a secure border. The list goes on and on. This president has delivered on every single promise that he made to the American people.
And last week, DNI Tulsi Gabbard unveiled new evidence that the Russia hoax came from the very, very top and directly implicates Barack Obama. Watch.
Leading up to the November 2016 election, the intelligence community agreed that there was no intelligence that reflected that Russia was trying to hack the election in favor of either candidate. The evidence showed, the intelligence showed that, again, Russia did not have either the intent nor the capability to be able to impact the outcome of the United States election. So it was very striking when we look back again at the documents that I declassified and released that shows there was a shift in early December, the first week of December. Again, another document was produced by the intelligence community, a president's daily brief that was consistent with every other assessment that was done previously leading up to the election. Russia did not, this is after the election now, did not attempt to affect the outcome of the American election. That was never published. Hours before it would have gone into President Obama's President's Daily Brief, it was pulled by a senior-level intelligence official saying that they had to pull it because they had received new guidance. The very next day, this meeting was called, a National Security Council meeting, bring together all of the senior leaders of President Obama's cabinet, and the topic that was put forward was a sensitive matter. The tasks that came out of that meeting was coming from President Obama directing the intelligence community, then Obama's ODNI director Clapper, to produce a document, to produce an intelligence assessment that detailed not if, but how Moscow affected the outcome of the election that had already occurred, electing Donald Trump to the presidency. This document that they published in January of 2017 was the foundational groundwork that they continued to reference over and over and over again to enact this years-long coup against President Trump.
Now, that breaking news prompted the president to put out this image depicting the Democrats' deep state cast members starring in the, quote, shady bunch, as the focus now shifts to whether or not any of these bad actors will face the heavy hand of justice. Joining me now politics editor at the Daily Signal, Bradley Devlin. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
All right, lot to talk about, very interesting. It's always interesting every day in the Trump administration. But welcome to the program. And let's talk about the new revelations from DNI Tulsi Gabbard as it relates to the Russia hoax. And what's the buzz around Capitol Hill? I was watching a lot of news coverage on this yesterday and today. Kind of break it down for us. What does this all mean?
Well, I have one big regret, and that's in 2016, I didn't set up a giant jug in my bedroom and put a coin in it every single time President Donald Trump was proven right about something.
Literally.
If you remember back in 2016, actually, late in the campaign, when he was talking about how he had confidence that the Obama administration was wiretapping his campaign, that there was all sorts of surveillance happening, and even some allies on the right of the president were thinking, oh, maybe he's out a little bit over his skis here. Well, lo and behold, 2 years later, we know that to be true. One thing that I think is crucial about these new revelations is who is that intelligence official that pulls that part of the president's briefing on December 8th. We still don't have any answers about that. And this, I think, serves as a broader launching off point. I'm so glad DNI Tulsi Gabbard came out with this information because the American people deserve transparency on this issue. I mean, this reformed American politics on the right and left, no matter how you slice it. And of course, it's proven to be a complete and total hoax. But what this does is not only give this transparency to the American people, it actually forces Congress to kick into high gear and perform its oversight function. Now, James Comer at the Oversight Committee, for example, can subpoena all sorts of previous officials from the Obama administration, from the Biden administration, Special Counsel Durham, Robert Mueller. I mean, how did these people miss this December 9th meeting? A lot of these reports were just completely mum from when we got the Steele dossier in September of 2016 until January of 2017, which is the report that was requested by President Obama. We know that now thanks to DNI Gabbard. And it was largely silent for that 5 or 6 months there. And now I think it's Congress's role to really jump in, especially as we head into a crucially important midterm election year. Congress got some business to finish up here in September with the spending, government shutdown fight, etc. But after that, it's going to turn to hearings and oversight functions as they gear up for another election.
Of course, this confirms what many of us have been saying for nearly a decade, that it was all a hoax. But how much of this scandal truly is actually also a media scandal?
I think a large portion of it is a media scandal. Remember, one of the reasons why the press right now faces a crisis in confidence is because in their zeal to get President Trump, to prevent him the win in 2016, to prevent him from having high approval ratings or to getting his agenda done in the first term, and then, of course, to prevent him from coming back to office in November of 2024, they threw journalistic ethics out the window. If my reporters are getting things that isn't for attribution, we need to make sure that we have multiple sources confirming this before we go through. You saw multiple reports during the Russia hoax of one unnamed source here and another unnamed source there. This is the Miles Taylors of the world going and leaking to the media and saying that this Trump administration or these Trump folks were really up to no good. I mean, a perfect example of this is not only in the media, but also in the Russiagate scandal itself. Alex Downer was the Australian diplomat who claimed that George Papadopoulos had these connections to the Russian government, that the Trump campaign was infiltrated by Russian assets, etc. Well, Alex Downer previously, when he was in the Australian government, had directed $25 million to the Clinton Foundation and its fight against AIDS. And so, though that's just one particular source that helped launch Operation Crossfire Hurricane. Of course, Christopher Steele's another one of those characters. And time again, it seems like investigative ethics on both the governmental side and in the journalism world were thrown out the window in their zeal to get Trump.
But it doesn't all mean much, if there's not accountability. As a former prosecutor, I really believe strongly in that. I'm glad that, all of us who knew this and the president are vindicated, that it's come to light. Do you think there will actually be a reckoning from this? The DOJ says they've received a criminal referral from ODNI. Where does it go from here?
I think from here, it is incumbent upon Pam Bondi and our justice officials to make sure that action is taken here. I think you can also let Congress take the lead for a little bit and see what type of referrals Congress might make if they investigate this further. But I think Pam Bondi is under a lot of pressure right now because of this Epstein stuff, because of everything that's going on. I think she's under pressure to move once these types of criminal referrals are recommended to her, especially when it comes to issues of government transparency. So I would love to see Clapper, Brennan, etc. charged here. There's a reason why these people lost their security credentials upon Donald Trump returning back to office. And one thing else that I'd point out, this is kind of tangential, is when this actually happens, if Pam Bondi goes forward with this, what they're going to say in the media and they're going to say on the left is that this is just a revenge tour, this is retribution, this is really dark, final days of democracy stuff. Well, the political incentives for the left is when they are being called, on their baloney, when they are when they're being held accountable by the American people, every incentive for them is to double down. Because if they double down, they twist the screws harder, they do more surveillance on President Trump, they do more surveillance on his supporters, they go all the way in on prosecuting to the maximum extent of the law, and sometimes even going beyond the law to punish January 6th protesters, etc. They're doubling down on that strategy because if they win, no one's held accountable. And if they end up losing, and there are calls for accountability, well, they can say that it's merely revenge, that it's just retribution. And so there's no incentive right now for Democrats to play nice, for deep state actors to play nice. They want to double down on this strategy, and the only way you can get them to back off is by actually sending someone to jail, and putting Clapper or Brennan or one of these other folks in those orange jumpsuits as we saw on the president's Truth Social.
And you mentioned Comer and oversight. What does that process look like? Should we expect hearings? How do you expect this to play out?
I would hope there would be hearings. The problem is right now they've been so distracted with one big beautiful bill, and distracted is not the best word there. They've been so focused on the big beautiful bill. They've been so focused on these appropriations fights that the only type of time they have for oversight is really getting to the bottom of the auto pen scandal. And I've talked to members of Congress in the past few weeks saying, hey, we really think we can chew bubble gum and walk at the same time here. We can have multiple investigations. We need to be in, they haven't had a hearing on the Epstein saga, for example, even prior to the president recommending that the grand jury testimony be declassified, opened up, and available to the public. They hadn't had a hearing on that. They haven't had a hearing on any of these types of issues. And so I want Comer to take that up and really run with this football that he's been given by the ODNI, Tulsi Gabbard.
And speaking of Democrats, doubling down and melting down, we still see them, attacking ICE and defending, bizarrely enough, illegal aliens. What is driving that on the Hill inside Democrat leadership?
I think what's really driving it is this was their playbook. This was, it's so funny. We were all called great replacement conspiracy theorists by just pointing out op-eds in the New York Times and the Washington Post in 2012 and 2014 and 2015, pointing out that you guys were claiming we have this massive demographic problem, that as we encourage more Latinos to immigrate, more minority groups to immigrate from all over the world, that once they are naturalized, once they become American citizens, they will be solidly in the pocket of the Democratic Party. That was their words, not ours. Right. And so now, they're really pushing for this because they ultimately know that that's a great route to permanent power in Washington, D.C. But the other part of this is the Democratic base is so radicalized that they're really out for blood, and I say that figuratively sometimes and literally sometimes. We saw this with the firebombing of Tesla stations. We saw this with assaults on Jewish communities all across this country and just despicable acts of hate. We see this frequently with Border Patrol agents and ICE agents. And so I really think that there's a lot of pressure on Democrat politicians right now on the Hill to fight harder. This has been a major critique of Jeffries and Schumer, and they're saying they're not fighting this battle hard enough. Sure, Schumer's delaying Trump nominees. I'm preaching to the choir right now, but they're delaying Trump nominees. They are, Jeffries is having his magic minute and breaking records for speeches on the House floor. That's not enough for the Democratic base. They've seen the Democrats lose to Donald Trump twice, and they think it's because they didn't go left populist enough. They are tired of the kind of neoliberal faction of the Democratic Party having its day, and they want new leaders. They want new leaders like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I know it sounds crazy, and I know it sounds scary, but as someone who was tired with the Republican establishment and really turned towards President Trump, you can't help but relate a little bit to what's happening on the left. You can completely disagree with their program. I think government-run grocery stores is a terrible idea and borderline evil, but that's why you see Zoran Mamdani picking up traction. This new guy, Omar Fatah in Minneapolis, everywhere, right? And that's what's going on in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, we might be talking 5 years from now about a remake of the Democratic Party, akin to the remake of the populist nationalist Trump Party that has emerged under the last 10 years of Donald Trump's leadership.
Is there a playbook on the left? Because they need to rip some pages out and start over. But it just seems like it's just a hodgepodge of people who just, hate all things Trump, just a reflexive, reaction. If Trump's for it, we'll be against it, even if it's good for the country. I don't know how you can ever win on that.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing the Democrats have really lost is they don't have a consistent policy vision. I mean, Trump has really embraced, of course, in 2016, MAGA. It was just all over the place. It was, Obama was jealous of the merch that President Donald Trump was able to push with that slogan. And of course, MAGA makes a return in 2024. But with this added element of the golden age, right? Talking about the aesthetics of what the American economy looks like in the future, of what American life and American families look like in the future. And that was really something that inspired, I think, younger voters in my age demographic, Gen Zers, to come alongside the president. Whereas, you have this really sclerotic, old, aging Democratic Party, of course, encapsulated by Joe Biden, but Chuck Schumer, the Dianne Feinsteins of the world, Nancy Pelosi still kicking it around in Washington, D.C. They kind of saw the Democrat Party as this really fake, inauthentic, manufactured political entity that is without a rudder, that's without a true vision. And I think that's why you see some of these hardcore leftists gaining traction, is because, love them or hate them, these people at least are offering a substantive vision of what the future of Democratic politics and policy can do for the country, whereas Chuck Schumer seems to be more concerned with managing the coffers of the party. Of course, that's very important. Managing this consortium of interests, which includes the cultural elite, the billionaires and millionaires, the super funders of the Democratic Party, and of course, the activists oftentimes paid to march in the streets class that makes up the Democratic grassroots and the base, whereas the Republican Party, for some of its flaws, has always been much more decentralized than the Democratic Party. But that means that conversion, when you jump from independent to Republican or Democrat to Republican, it's more genuine. You have more of the zeal of the convert. I mean, how many stories can we point to in the last 10 years of people who said, I bought all the lies that the media was telling me about President Donald Trump, and I've actually went back and investigated all of it, and I found out it was a complete lie, and now I am all the way on the Trump train. And so that's kind of an advantage that the Republicans have, and the Democrats are having a hard time replicating that, because the incentive structure of their party as it's lined up right now leans towards this inauthentic, astroturf aesthetic that can't really deliver for the American people, especially on the issues that matter, those kitchen table issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And, beyond some of these traditional economic indicators, how do you assess the overall health of American society today? And, what cultural trends or shifts do you believe are most impactful, for better or for worse?
Yeah, I think one thing that has really excited me is that right now, no men and women's sports, the transgender issue, it's an 80-20 issue for Republicans. I mean, it looked like we were going to lose that battle before President Donald Trump won in 2016, before he got to the White House. I mean, it seemed like the Republicans who had ceded the ground on every cultural issue for the last 30 years in the name of more GDP or more this and less that, progressivism in slow motion is what some people call the Republican Party sometimes. That they were going to cede the ground on that issue. And with President Trump's resolve, with his leadership, the Republican Party has rallied around that issue, really planted a flag in the ground. But you cannot be done there. You cannot be satisfied with taking the men out of women's sports. This society cannot exist if we deny fundamental realities.
Yes.
This is a country that only works. That this is a regime that only operates well. The Constitution will only remain alive if the American people remain a strong sense of morality, a strong sense of what is real and what is not real. And that strong sense of reality, I think, is what gives us that little c constitutionalism that has us go about our work every day living as Americans, right? If we want the government to be hands-off, we have to take matters into our own hands and manage our lives in an effective and efficient manner. And if we can't acknowledge that men are men and women are women, then none of that is possible whatsoever. The other thing, though, that concerns me is when we've been talking about with the One Big Beautiful Bill, all these different spending levels, right? Well, spending on Medicaid in particular is, I think, 60% higher than it was like this year than it was in 2019. I mean, it's just exploded. And one of those, I think, issues for Republicans moving forward is you have created this populist base that is attracting more people from lower socioeconomic ladders. You have more working class voters. You have more voters who oftentimes are benefiting a little bit from the government dole. And if you want to protect those programs for the most vulnerable in our population, you can do so. But it's going to be a difficult sell when not the American people, but their political leaders who are communicating with them have the memories of goldfish and can't remember that, just 5 years ago, spending was 60% lower on this certain government program. And the reason that it was lower is because more people were actually willing to take up the mantle, take control of their own lives and go to work. And I think the pandemic, of course, we still feel the results of those Democrat shutdowns all over the country because it incentivized people to not only shelter in place, but shelter themselves from the world. And that reemergent, that process of reinserting themselves and taking control of their own life has become really, really difficult for a lot of people. And this particularly affects young men in this country.
Yes,
we've heard a lot of Republicans talk about that over the course of the One Big Beautiful Bill. And that's a concerning indicator for me, is that Republicans need to pair their messaging on government spending with a call for young men to step up and be leaders in the country moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more as a mother of an 18-year-old boy and a lot of other important children in my life. And I just feel terribly for young men in this country and what they've been put through. It's awful. And it's, I think it's deeply psychologically disturbing as well. And we have to think about that impact. So what else are you covering over at the Daily Signal? Because we love the Daily Signal. Really do. I love smart, intelligent people. Call me crazy.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. And one thing that we're covering is a shutdown.
Yeah.
We're about to go on August recess. You know, it's funny, I got an email, I won't tell who it's from, but there was a story that we wrote saying that the Senate's about to go on vacation, and one Senate office didn't particularly enjoy that we called it vacation. Listen, if you've ever spent 5 minutes in Washington, D.C. In the month of August, it's a ghost town. My commute's about to be 15 minutes faster for the entire month.
Literally.
Literally. And so with this whole August recess, there's less than 3 weeks of session days left before we're going to hit that September 30th government funding limit, and we're going to potentially shut the government down. And will Democrats, because we just talked about this, right? The Democratic base wants them to get serious about their opposition to Trump. Will Democrats do political brinksmanship? Will they shut the government down over the Trump agenda? That is the number one question that we're considering right now. I think it's totally a possibility. Of course, they shut the government down in the last Trump administration because Trump wanted to deliver for the American people on his number one campaign promise, which was the border wall. And they shut the government down over that. They have every incentive to try to shut the government down this time, and they will try to blame Republicans for it. So will the mainstream media. Why? Because the incentive is, if I'm a Democrat, I can say, I will spend all the money in the world to keep the government open. It's those nasty Republicans that you elected who want to cut government spending, and they won't spend the money to keep it open. So it's a structural advantage for them. They're going to try to take advantage of it. It's completely disingenuous, and they need to be held to account on this, because if they shut the government down over this, they will run into a catch-22 at some point, because then all of those non-essential government employees go home. Could be helpful for some Doge efforts, I think.
I know, right? So, we're trying to figure out what the, Congress's agenda looks like for the rest, of the summer, like you said, potential shutdown, August 4th recess, not back till after September 2nd, like 100 and something plus, of Trump's nominees are sitting on the Senate floor. I might know a person or two. But the president put out that Truth Social. He wants Senate Majority Leader Thune to skip the August recess. And I'll tell you something, those guys already got their jets, lined up on the runway. And when they start smelling that jet fuel burning, there's issues. What have you heard?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure if the Senate's keen on staying in D.C. any more than it is. Being a senator is a pretty cool gig. You get to work from Tuesday to Thursday. There was a lot of talk at the beginning of this Congress that Senator Thune, his calendar did have more session days than the House. It still has more session days than the House, which is a good development for the Senate. However, the Senate, we're talking about working, weekends, Fridays, etc., to push a lot of these nominees across the line. And that lasted through the cabinet and to some other crucial positions. But since then, there was negotiations with the big, beautiful bill and the executive calendar, right? So there's two calendars in the Senate. There's a legislative calendar and the executive calendar. And the executive calendar suffered. And President Donald Trump is absolutely right to say, hey, we need to make sure that we're moving on this, because in the first administration, the only reason why Trump's numbers were not abysmal at the end of his first year in office when it comes to political appointees, was because he forced a deal between Republicans and Democrats that he was going to get 100 and some odd nominations in a single day right before the August recess. And the deal was kind of that after Obamacare repeal failed, that the Senate wouldn't try to bring it back up in a future budget reconciliation package. Was that deal ever totally official? Rumors continue to percolate years later on this, but that was kind of the deal. And I think Trump is looking for another deal here. It says, we can get this done in a very quick manner if we offer something potentially to the Democrats, or we could just have a little bit more inter-party discipline, and we can make sure that we stay an extra week and just load the calendar up, because it only takes really actions from Senate leadership to schedule these votes and to get them done. You probably know this process much better than I do at this point. It's just scheduling the votes, running the clock, and getting through these nominations as quickly as possible. And the other reason why you want to get through these executive branch nominations as quickly as possible is because once more judicial nominations come in, the Senate is going to totally push the executive branch nominations aside. They are going to want to appoint as many judges as possible. Why? Because they serve during terms of, what is it in the Constitution? Good behavior, which means they'll be there. There's no term limit to these judges, as you learned in your eighth grade civics course. And so they want to focus on those appointees rather than appointees that could, those nominations rather than appointees that will cycle out after the administration is over. And so they need to act now or forever hold their peace.
Yeah, well, it's an important point. I mean, and he wants his judicial nominees in. It's incredibly important. We've seen that. So, yeah, it's just a lot to deal with. And the Democrats are, obviously being obstructionists, except for Jeanne Shaheen, who voted for me to support me.
So you recently just got advanced. Mm-hmm. The process behind the scenes there, I mean, I'm sure you've been talking to other nominees here, 136 of you still stuck on the executive calendar. I mean, what is the sentiment inside that group, I guess, that cohort right now?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have like 35 of them are ambassadors, like after the hearings tomorrow, et cetera. So it's, people are frustrated. No one knows. Everyone's trying to read the tea leaves and seeing what's going to happen. And there's 9 business days left starting tomorrow. So I think, people are just waiting to see. I mean, anything can happen, right? When you're dealing with President Trump and, like you said, executive nominations. I don't know. We'll see. We wish we knew. Where's the crystal ball? Where is it?
Yeah, he works in the Capitol building, and he ought to be out in front of this, or else this is even going to cause more problems, because this has been they got through the cabinet super quickly, and It's kind of been this slow burn in MAGA world. Like, it's totally a beltway issue. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like the MAGA divides that you've potentially seen over the Iran strike or the Epstein files or anything like that. It's not a grassroots issue. It's like a total inside the beltway thing. I totally acknowledge that. But it matters for the American people when they expect that the president is going to have his people to enact his agenda across the government.
I mean, there's important ones.
They need reinforcements, right?
Yeah, like, National Labor Relations Board, that they don't have a quorum because Trump got rid of the Democrat, and now that needs to get in. The head of Fish and Game and Wildlife. I mean, it's just like it goes on and on and on. Janine Pirro's in that stack. There's just like so many people. Like you said, now it's 136. Dear God, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think Senator Thune has some pressure on his shoulders. Poor guy. You wouldn't want to be him right now.
No, it's the worst job in Washington, D.C. That and Speaker of the House, worst jobs ever.
I know. We like our jobs. This is nice, relaxing, talking about everything. But you're the absolute best, Bradley Devlin. We love you. We love the Daily Signal. Tell everyone where they can watch you, see you, follow you.
Yes, please check out thedailysignal.com for our coverage of Capitol Hill and coverage of state governments, too. We've got a correspondent in Virginia now covering that gubernatorial election. And of course, in Ohio, we're covering that state really closely because it is a very strong center of gravity for the MAGA movement right now, and a lot of vulnerable Dems there in 2026. Also, check out my show, The Signal Sit Down with Bradley Devlin. We try to go inside the fights happening in Washington, D.C. as they happen with the policymakers. So we try to get them comfortable and then say something they shouldn't tell you. That's the entire MO of that show. And everything else on X at Bradley Devlin.
Oh my God, so devious, but so fun. Thank you so much for being on the program. Look forward to having you back again very soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care. And we'll continue covering all of this, and coming up, a deep dive into all things in the Trump economy with tax expert Julio Gonzalez. And in the meantime, be sure to check out the 1775 Coffee Company. We talk about it all the time. Don't compromise on taste, quality, or your values. And 1775 Coffee is brewed to perfection, crafted with precision, and built on patriotism. The farm-to-cup process means there is quality, authenticity, and sustainability from start to finish. All the beans are ethically and exclusively single-sourced. So try 1775 Coffee today. Go to 1775coffee.com/KG for 15% off your first order. Yum. Now, new data released by the White House this week shows that the tariffs are working, folks, okay? That consumer sentiment is on the rise, and that Americans are seeing the benefits of the Trump economy. Watch.
Farmers in Granger County say that can shift customers over to local growers. Steve Longmire owns Tennessee Homegrown Tomatoes. He says right now the county may not see a difference because it's tomato season.
Plenty of tomatoes, that's right. See, like in the fall and wintertime, we have to count on, and you know the nation does, tomatoes in warmer climates. So that's where it's going to be a good thing for the farmer.
Patty Morgan helps organize the Granger County Tomato Festival. She says it's important to shop local.
For the freshness, because when you get them here, they literally are from the field. And of course, in the store, you're not sure.
Longmire says the higher prices on some imported Mexican tomatoes could help out local farmers in Florida during the cooler months.
Or hopefully more of their tomatoes is going to sell at a little bit better price because the tariff on the imports.
Morgan says the Tomato Festival has been popular for years in the area. She could see a bigger crowd coming in this weekend, but she feels prepared.
5 tomato growers, and they do have plenty of tomatoes. That sounds like not that many for as big a business as it is. It's a huge industry in our county, but 5, they'll have plenty of tomatoes.
And joining me now, founder of Engineered Tax Services, tax expert Julio Gonzalez. Thank you so much for being back on the program.
Yeah, for having me. Listen, Kimberly, we just took in $100 million in tariff income to the country, more than we last year, and we started tariffs April.
It's unbelievable. It's incredible results, and you and I were both just recently in D.C., and thank you for coming for my hearing and everything. It was very supportive. I appreciate that. And you had a lot of important meetings as well. I met with some smart people that are working for the Trump administration to talk about these issues, to really bring it to the table about what's going to help the American people. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, I wanted to say this, Kimberly. These tariffs now are projected to bring in $5 trillion over the next 10 years. I don't know how the Democrats or Elon Musk thought this is actually a bill that was going to create debt for the country. Actually, it's being down the debt. Like, who had the right math? No one did. Obviously, we have a businessman as president for a country that's making this a business and creating fair trade and free trade, and look at the results.
No, it's incredible. And on the back of the latest inflation data, I'm showing core inflation at 2.1% and wholesale prices flat. What specific aspects of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, in your opinion, are most impactful in this regard to, keep it up with strengthening our economy?
Kimberly, when I get asked that question, I think about things I could live. I know you only have a few minutes with, so listen, I think that when we did these tax cuts, we made them permanent. No small business owner anymore has to worry every year about a changing tax code. My goodness, that is so amazing. And for the individuals, no tax on tips, no on Social Security for seniors. Incredible. I mean, the list could go on, but those are my top 3.
Yeah, I think so. And industrial production and manufacturing output have shown significant gains. So from a tax perspective, what incentives do you believe are primarily driving this surge in domestic production, and how can these be sustained or enhanced?
Yeah, and President Trump restored the ARM tax credits. Credits are big for manufacturing companies. Kimberly, I've just in Cleveland. I came back from Cleveland today, and there alone, they had 100 new companies come in from overseas into Ohio to start doing the manufacturing here in our country and bring jobs and bring the technology. And what a boom for that state. But we're seeing this in every state, that companies are coming here. They want to be in the United States. They want to take part of the Trump administration's programs here and be part of this Bitcoin, all things that he's got going with the Genius Bill. So it's just so tremendous.
And from a tax viewpoint, what policies, either in place or recently enacted, are most effectively stimulating, new construction, home ownership, and what challenges do you think remain in ensuring affordable housing options?
Yeah, and listen, we have so many new tax now for affordable housing. So, this is a public-private partnership, right? The government want to own this affordable housing. They want to team up with the public, the city, and what happens, these businesses come in because of all these tax credits, historical tax credits restored. Now we have low-income housing tax credit restored, and this is bringing back housing. The government's helped out with some grant, and so are the states. This is bringing it back, and so I mean, President Trump and his administration, Congress, what a great job to bring this housing back, bring housing to the country, really, every state. We're seeing that here in Florida. We're seeing it all over. It's just listen, what else to do? I mean, they've done so much already. Now it's people getting the opportunity, but now it's creating more entrepreneurship, right? Now it's been people that are starting to build these projects, and what a boom for this country.
And what are some of the biggest tax-related challenges or opportunities that you anticipate for businesses, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, as we move into this second half of 2025?
I think the biggest is we have now 1,000 more new pages of tax code, right? For them,
wow,
their account, it's going to be a lot to digest because there's so many. But every page of that tax code now, the new tax code, is so pro business. There are so many tax advantages for all small business owners, from employment tax, overtime tax, to business credits, R&D tax credits, bonus depreciation at 100%, buying equipment, investing in your company, more employment tax credits for investing in people, business. So, oh my goodness, so many great things. But I guess the biggest challenge to try to get through the 1,000 pages and understand it all. But see you, Kimberly, helpful to be up in DC and work with the IRS commissioner and talk about those things and see how we deploy that and get that information out to everyone, the ones that they can enjoy, because that's going to be the real challenge is to overwhelmed with all the new tax code.
No, you're absolutely right. And you know what I like? I like the eagerness and the willingness of this administration to talk to experts like yourself to actually implement, understand on the deeper level and implement impactful changes that will really help the economy, will help hardworking men and women out there, taxpayers, entrepreneurs for small and medium-sized businesses. I think that's really crucial in terms of stimulating our economy and jobs and thriving as a country under this Trump administration.
Yeah, this is better than 2017, and I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Make it permanent, add more tax credits for business owners, for individuals as well, right? This is not just for billionaires and millionaires. This is for all small businesses, all individuals. This tax couldn't be more generous to them and to our country, really.
No,
and look at it, Kimberly, just real quickly. Yeah, it's paying off, right? We're increasing debt. We're starting to pay the debt down because all money's coming in and acting on these tariffs.
Yeah, it's very good. I like it. We're definitely going the right direction. I kept telling people, have faith, hold on to the steering wheel here, because tariffs are a negotiating tactic. We had to level out the playing field because it had been so unfair for so long. And there's a little bit of growing pain, but there's long-term gains that are sustainable. And, the Democrats don't want to admit, wow, look at this, look at inflation, et cetera. Things are working out. Countries are coming to the table to do business with the United States. And we see the impact, even like you said, Justin, Tennessee with farmers and people growing tomatoes, et cetera. So a lot of this, I think, is going to be very helpful, and we're seeing some of those benefits roll in. And I'll give you the final word on what else you would like to see happen that you think would be very important.
We got to cut interest rates. We have to do that, Kimberly. Anything you can do to help us there.
Okay.
I mean, we've got to get them out of the way. We got to get that chairman out of the way here, because he's killing small businesses. And I'll say this,
I think he's on the way out.
Well, let's get him out, because small business owners are coming out of a horrible administration with regulations on them and higher taxes. Now this administration comes in and cleans that up. But now these interest rates, right? They're loans that were maturing with the SBA have now doubled, right, in interest. And how can they afford it? It's horrible. Well, we've got to do something about this. We've got to get that chairman out of here and get interest rate down to small businesses. And what about our country that has to pay, the bill that now Trump's paying with these tariffs? But ultimately, it's expensive for the country. It's expensive for these small business owners, and that's got to be the number one change.
No, I don't disagree. And also, Julio, let's tell everyone where they can go to learn more about your company, and they want to learn about tax credits and what they can do. Take it away.
Yeah, engineerxservices.com. I'm on Instagram, tax reform expert. So I have day tips there for tax tips and free grants from the government that no one's applying for. There's so many small business grants out there that we could take advantage of. It's free, equity. And listen to big corporations take it. Be equitable to all small businesses and make sure they take it too.
Okay, fantastic. Julio Gonzalez, so smart, so talented. Thank you for taking the time, making time for us on the show. Look forward to having you back on again very soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, God bless. And in closing, President Trump is doing what he said he was going to do, securing the border, lowering taxes, and putting the American workers first. It is not theoretical. It is not rhetorical. It is not abstract. It is reality. And it's only the first 6 months. Wow. I know. And we have a long road of prosperity ahead. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today and every day. Please be sure to download the Rumble app, subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, like and share, and tell all your friends so they know exactly where to find us. And please also be sure to follow me across all platforms: X, Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Stay tuned to Rumble for all the very latest breaking news coverage. Don't miss Don Jr.'s big show live at 6 p.m. Eastern tonight. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again very soon. God bless.